We just popped live. We're here. We're here with the Colonel tonight, Lieutenant Colonel retired Scott P. Caldwell. I'm excited about it, and just chilling out here. This is fun times, right? Living the moment. We're good in Scooty Wop, right? What kind of name is Scooty Wop?
Versace trunks, I hit my backstroke. Knock on the door. She at the back, bro. All I really take is a little taste. Island girl, blue eyes with a little bass. Here for the thrill, I don't need a chaser. Wanna vibe at the getaway. Shimmy, shimmy, yeah, I got the semi-fold.
While we're listening to that, I dug into my old Foot Locker. I got this old World War II green Foot Locker.
Yeah.
And right now, it's everything in that Foot Locker is everything I did or I was. And I just grabbed this handful of pictures from my time. A lot of it from 3-4 ADA, of course. And I'm just sitting here kind of looking through some of these pictures and remembering. I haven't looked at some of these for a long time. That seems like a lifetime ago.
I know, right? It is. It's a lifetime ago. It is crazy.
You were there. I remember you were in the battalion the same time as me, right?
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. We were definitely. So I was in a different platoon. I was in Bravo Battery for a while. So I came back and I was in Charlie Battery, and then I went and left and went to the Advanced Airborne School, and that kind of thing. So yeah.
I wonder. You might have been there when I went through Jumpmaster School. Maybe that's what I remember too.
Oh, could be.
Maybe you're the one that failed me first time around.
That might be. Hey, never know. It's funny watching folks talk to me about when they did fail to meet the minimum required standards and therefore not pass Jumpmaster course because of this, that, or the other, and they're like, "You failed me," and I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. I did."
No. I failed that first time. That first shot at the JMPA stuff, and then coming back that second day, man, the pressure was on, brother.
Oh yeah, dude. Whew, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
So
when you're the Undertaker's XO, man, you have to. There's no option for failing. You can't just don't come home if you fail.
So you call Colonel Underhill the Undertaker? Is that what you're saying?
I didn't, but I think that was the rumor, or that was kind of a name that went around because he would definitely strike fear in your heart if you weren't doing the right thing when no one was watching. If you weren't on top of your game, you would feel the pain. I remember one time a young lieutenant we had when I was an XO in Alpha Battery. We did a 3-day deployment with the brigade, and the lieutenant did a couple things that were just outside the box. And he went back early, which was another thing that was outside the box. And I remember Captain Underhill was there, and he had his knife out, and he was whittling something. And I'm like, "What are you whittling?" And he's like, "Well, you're on the next chalk to go back." It was this big dart, and he engraved on it, "Key to the L&O shop." And he said, "When you get back, I want you to give this to that lieutenant and stake it right in his heart, because when I get back, nobody wanted to go be the ADA L&O anywhere. That was the death place to go." So, yeah.
Oh, well.
We had high standards.
So, we're talking about, General Underhill here when he was a captain, and one of the most loved figures in our branch. And what a great leader. He put me in timeout one time, at JRTC. It was like he basically, I was on the OC radio. I was not being nice looking back on it. I was not. And the augmentee OC ended up God gunning me, right? And then and then they were trying to kill. I was like this platoon sergeant kind of guy, and I had all these missiles. I was traveling on the battlefield and this, that, and the other. But long and short of it was the colonel said, go sit under the tree for an hour, and then rekey yourself and go back to work. And I was like, "Okay, sir." And so, anyway.
Go go collect yourself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh! So we're here with Lieutenant Colonel retired Scott P. Caldwell, and sir, it's so great to hang out with you. The Ranger. That was your, you were Ranger Caldwell. That was a big deal for us in our branch to be Ranger qualified.
Mm.
Back in the day was, that was a big deal. It was a big deal. It's still a big deal. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of what I remember. Where are you from originally?
Oh, I'm from Ohio. I'm from a little town called Sandusky, Ohio, which is up on Lake Erie, up on the where Ohio kind of dips in the middle, about halfway between Cleveland and Toledo. So there's a big amusement park there called Cedar Point that folks that are from um, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, everybody, it's kind of like a huge Six Flags thing. And they don't know Sandusky, but if I say Cedar Point, sometimes they know that. But it was a nice place to grow up, but it was a nice place to see in the rearview mirror too.
Right, right. What was you know, you're a few years older than I. You grow up in the 70s?
I graduated high school in '81, and I first enlisted in '81.
Oh,
Right, high
wow.
school, yeah. So, man, I am creeping up on 6-0 in about another year and a half. I
I
can't
know.
believe it. I still feel like I'm 12. I
It
still
you
act
know
like
it,
I'm 12.
Yeah, it's wild. I still think of myself, I think deep down inside is that I'm 23, I think. I
Yeah,
think.
that would be a good time to go back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Knowing everything I know now, man, I could change the world.
All right. So if you could go back, what would one of the first policies that you would implement if you could, if I was president and had my way, there wouldn't be a leg in the army today. What would
Oh,
what would
yeah.
you do?
I don't know about that piece, but I think, at the time, I've been married now my second time and found my soulmate my second time. And, I had been in, did 3 years, got out. I had a couple of amazing NCOs at ROTC. I went to Bowling Green State University in Ohio, which is just south of Toledo. And I got into the Army Guard when I got out. I was in the infantry there for the time. I was an SMP cadet, and geez, about 2 dark years in the Air Guard, which I don't tell people about too much before I came back to the Army. But I had this one guy was a Vietnam era snake eater, Green Beret, Master Sergeant Holman, and that guy was the countryest guy you could ever meet. But the skill set that he had, that he taught with us. He was so quiet and cool and collected. And on the other hand, we had the total opposite. We had a CSM who had been both the Ranger Regimental Sergeant Major and but Ranger Battalion Sergeant Major, and he was totally the opposite. But I think during that year was the first year that senior ROTC had what they called Ranger Challenge, which was a military skills competition team. And so I got into that, and I was the leader of that team. And I think with those guys, and another guy, Captain Fred Smith, who was kind of our team mentor, I think if I'd had to do things differently, I would have picked a different path. I really was interested in infantry and maybe being in a Ranger battalion or doing some SF stuff. But I made compromise at the time for the family. And so I thought, well, okay, if I can't do that, air defense was interesting and go to the 82nd, I can still jump out of airplanes, have adventures, maybe go to Ranger school. And I think that's what I would probably change if I could.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing. Were you like a networker as a kid? Were you the spoke
No,
and the wheel in the neighborhood, or were you the
no, I
loner?
was that's the funny thing, because I was looking at your questions and stuff there, and I thought about it. In high school, I was all about sports and nothing about education. I graduated with a 1.9 grade point average. So in modern day, a 2.0, I would have been left behind. I had no interest in studies. I really liked sports. Um, in high school, then we had the jock group, we had the druggy group, we had the popular group, and I had some friends in all those groups, but I wasn't really part of any of those. And it really was when I joined the Army. I was kind of a smart ass. Believe it or not, I had this big blonde afro, in high school, and my parents kind of laughed, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll be back to get you in about 2 weeks. That's about how long you're going to last in the Army with your attitude." And once I got there, everything, all my planets came into alignment for me. I mean, it was the first time I felt like I fit somewhere, I belonged in somewhere. I absolutely loved it. It just clicked. And I think it shocked my parents, like, wow, okay. They came for what do you call that, parent visitation day and basic training, and they were just, I think, blown away by how much I loved it.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
What was it? What was it like to find your spot? Find your niche. Isn't that a neat thing? Joe Benson, my buddy, says awesome. Thanks for sharing your story.
I see Mario out there.
Yeah,
He's one of my heroes.
Who now?
We'll talk about him later.
Yeah. Look at there. Mario says, I love that guy. So yeah, thanks for hanging out. We got some folks hanging out with us tonight here on Heroes Live. Let me take a minute, if you don't mind, and just share a couple things with you guys about what's happening here, so that you kind of get an understanding. Here's our master rated donors. We had a special master rated donor last night. Thank you, Hacky. There's some confusion as to who your name, what your real name is, but thank you. He actually, he had made a special donation that had an 80-second connection. So thank you. We appreciate it. We appreciate that. All of our master rated donors: Williams, Jackman, Calderon, Hackey, Evans, Cobos, Wino, Ridgeway. Our senior rated donors: Newton, Diaz, Shrum, Fernandez, Kirkendall, Allen. Thank you so much. Thanks always to our basic donors. Thanks everybody for your support. It's just Joe and I, and we're
I'm gonna have to get on that list. I didn't know you even had a donor list.
Oh yeah, we're putting this together. This was, look, after Maggot got sick, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maggot, right?
Right.
And dude, Maggot and I are buddies, right? He was Jumpmaster Black Hat, ahead of me. He was the guy that I looked to for guidance and support. And
Right.
Hey, what do I do, man? And he was a walk-in knowledge. If there was anybody that I could look to that had read the regulation and had at least a reference on about anything, I'm telling you, he had read it and knew where to find it. And he was just an amazing guy. An amazing guy. When I found out that he was having problems remembering, I was like, why am I not talking and recording and getting these memories? Because we flew around in airplanes together in the middle of the night, and all the stuff that we've all done, and so that's what we got going on tomorrow night. Let me talk just briefly, if you guys don't mind. I want to show you this person, a cool guy that we're gonna hang out with tomorrow night. Command Sergeant Major Sean Lear. He is,
man.
Yeah, you know him, right?
I gotta tune in for that one.
Oh, so
I shared a tent with him in Desert Storm for a while.
Oh my God! So look, I truly believe that Sean Lear may be my toughest interview that I ever have. I'm scared, right?
It's going to be your most fun interview that you ever
think
had.
So. I think
There's
so.
no
right?
doubt about that.
Oh
That's
my
awesome.
gosh! Yeah. So really, we're trying to get these stories told before we get too sick to tell them, right? All of a sudden you find you're sick, you don't want to tell stories. You're like, no, we got to do it. We got to have a drink and toast, folks like Command Sergeant Major Sean Lear and Lieutenant Colonel retired Scott P. Caldwell, and say thank you so much for everything. We really appreciate all your leadership and standing in the gap out there. And And so tell me, you found your niche in the military, and and you talked about bumping around to different jobs and things early on before you got commissioned. Well, tell me some of the lessons that you learned through that. Was there something that maybe you finally unlocked, or was it just took time, or?
No, and there isn't a whole lot of folks, I don't think, probably on here, maybe that came in during that time or just before that time. But 81 was only a handful of years past the Vietnam era, and so I was down at Fort Hood. I worked on the Cobra weapon systems. My goal was I wanted to fly. That was something that I'd always wanted to do. My dad had been an armor guy in the guard and reserves and stuff, and we used to sit and watch all the war movies, and we used to build all these World War II, model planes I had hanging up in my room and stuff. And because I had had seasonal allergies and hay fever, I didn't pass my class 1 flight physical. So I couldn't do the high school to flight school thing. So I got an aviation job and thought, well, I'll just apply in a year or two. And I tried every year I was in, and every year they sent me back a copy of my first denied physical. But that was okay. I worked on the Cobras, and I OJT'd and got to fly with Hueys as kind of an extra crew chief sometimes when they were short. I just loved being in the air. And it was a different kind of Army because all of our NCOs were Vietnam era guys and Vietnam era vets, and it was different. It was just so different than, when I served later on. And even the officers back then, aviation wasn't even a branch. I was in 4th of the 9th Cav, 6th Air Cav down at Fort Hood. That was my first duty station, and it was a blast. But I really bopped around actually after I came back in. I mean, I had been in 4 branches. I was in the infantry during college. I came in as an air defender, and then I got picked up for flight school only because of an air defense assignment that I had with the aviation brigade, and got to know some folks there. And then I was civil affairs about my last 12 years. And so that's not usual. I was just lucky, just timing on things, I guess, and how things changed, that I was able to kind of move around a little bit.
Oh, wow.
So it was an interesting experience, that's for sure.
So tell me about becoming a commissioned officer and starting out that kind of a thought process of serving your country. Suddenly like you start screwing up too much, they'll put you in jail. What's that like?
I think when I did my 3 years, and I did really well. I loved it. We had I think they called it BL, basic leadership course. I went to that in the squadron as a PFC, and back then it was just NCO Academy. I went to that as a Spec 4 because I liked it. But when my time was up, I thought, this was cool, but I think I'm going to get out. I think I want to go to school. I didn't have any thoughts necessarily about a career. And then when I got out, I had 3 jobs, and I was going to school, and I joined the Air Guard for a little bit to get some money. And that was kind of interesting. But when I moved up to main campus, then I switched over to the Army Guard. And during all that time, working the jobs and interacting with people, something was missing. It was like, you meet another veteran, you already have this common understanding with them and common language, and you know where they've been, they know where you've been. But being out kind of in the quote civilian world, it was like I didn't have any of that, and I felt kind of out of place. And I was probably finishing up my Air Guard time when I moved to main campus, and they had ROTC, and I said, Jesus, you know what? I'm going to go back in. But I remember many times watching and seeing things and thinking like, okay, maybe I'm thinking outside the box here, but I think I could do this better. I think I had gained some skills that may be interested to maybe being a leader. And of course, the ROTC program is what it's all about. The cool thing about the SMP program is I'm in the classroom in ROTC learning all these concepts and skills. And then one weekend a month, I was a platoon leader as a cadet because I didn't have enough lieutenants. And so now I have my test platoon that I can test. They called me Clem Cadediot. I got made fun of quite a lot because I had my little silver circles on, but it was a lot of fun. All young kids from the university, and it was a winter infantry unit. We didn't have anything really but rucksacks and snowshoes and skis, and we used to go up to the Upper Peninsula in Michigan in the wintertime for our AT, and we just had a lot of fun. But I learned a lot, and I had some great NCOs there who had been around for a long time. So it was a really good place to grow up, I think, and get me ready to come back in again.
Amen. Amen. That's an awesome story about that. It's neat that we have all these programs and having a cadet or all kinds of different names you name the cadets. It's
Yep,
but
just like
it's
second lieutenants.
it's like live action role playing. They show up and they're like, ooh, salute me too, yay,
Yeah,
and it's fun, but
exactly.
it's cool.
Yep.
But everybody learns what you got to learn, and that's what it's about. And you get picked on, and it's okay to get picked on.
Mm.
It's okay to get picked
That's
on every
part of
once
the
in a while.
process. It was no different. It was no different coming into the division and into third or the fourth as a butter bar either. You know, it was just and coming in, a month. Oh, actually, not even a month. I want to say um, I got there and I was gone in 10 days, deployed in 10 days. I mean, I didn't even have time to unpack anything or whatnot for Desert Storm. So that was which was a great thing. I'm
Oh wow.
so glad I didn't miss that because I mean, that time really shaped me. And even right now, it sounds funny, and hopefully nobody that I work with right now is listening to this. So I'm the director for Army. I'm director for JROTC in my school district out here. So I have about 35 instructors. We've got 11 programs. We got about 2,000 cadets. But you know, I was like, oh, this is going to be great, man. I got these command sergeant majors and I got these lieutenant colonels and even colonels and stuff. But not everybody's grew up in the same place. And my time growing up in the 82nd and that time at Desert Storm, that set me up for success for the rest of my career. And I still never forget um, any of those principles and things I learned from all the great folks that were there. And the funny thing is, I looked at your questions and I'm thinking back about influential people, and I will tell you that the majority of these are all NCOs because that's who I learned everything with. Um, you know, uh, at the time, Captain Underhill, after deployment, I was with First of the '05 in Desert Storm, and I never saw anybody. I never saw. I can't even remember his name now. Gatlin. I think it was Captain Gatlin. Maybe was the battery commander, but we were out the whole time, and so I'll throw some of these names. Easy E. Remember his Johnny Zell?
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
my platoon sergeant, and he had already actually deployed when I got there, so I didn't meet him till we got in country. But obviously, Joe Stout, he was my distinguished section sergeant assigned to me. Mario was there. Sergeant Jefferson, I've not seen or heard anything from Sergeant J. Sergeant Bailey, Hicken, Leatherwood, Sergeant Robinson, Teddy Knight, Maggot. I mean, these were the guys who really, really taught me things, the guys who I looked up to because I wasn't around any other officers except, well, I should say air defense wise, I wasn't. But the great thing, this is funny, if you weren't tracking. So first of the '05, who was the battalion XO then?
I don't know.
Anybody?
I
It
don't
was
know.
Major Rodriguez.
Okay.
Soon, a little later, to be four-star General Rodriguez, Division Commander Rodriguez, and who was the S3 was General Caldwell, who was later to be the division commander. And I kept running into those guys later, but they were that's a team right there. Can you imagine the XO and the S3? And I'm a
Wow.
slice lieutenant there. Colonel Schrader
Wow.
was the battalion commander, and he was great. But those two guys, man, I learned a lot from those folks for sure.
I appreciate you sharing. It's so interesting to think about the moments and things that shaped us. And do you remember a time when you looked around and you said I'm the lieutenant. Maybe I need to be quiet. Or you looked around and you said, I'm the adult. Maybe I need to stand up and say something. Is there a time like that you're thinking of?
Mm, we were when we were over there in Desert Storm, which again was such an amazing deployment because it was the first full division up deployment that I can think of. Thinking about history, I mean, back World War II, you didn't have all the slice bastards we used to be called. You didn't have all that, so it was a division wide deployment, and and for air defense, that was going to be the Super Bowl. We've been studying those aircraft in the Cold War for all those years, and they had this big Air Force, and we were like, "Oh man, this is it for us!" Woohoo! Until the Air Force stole our thunder, and we didn't fire a bullet. I think Joe Cruz and Bravo Battery blew up a Toyota pickup truck, if I remember correctly. One time at nighttime out in the desert, but we didn't. The aircraft didn't get off the ground, but we were ready. I mean, we were all there and we took it seriously, and it was a challenge for us because we were used to the three slices. Everything was in threes, three brigades, three batteries, three platoons, three Stinger sections. But then all of a sudden we got DISCOM over there and we got Aviation Brigade over there. Well, everybody needs air defense, and we don't have enough to go around. So it was quite a juggling act to keep that going. But we squatted for 9 months before we really did anything. And we did a lot of training, but there was a lot of times moving around and being the new lieutenant. It was difficult. Some of the soldiers would just wanting to chill out and screw around sometimes and maybe not take things seriously. And so it's always difficult that first time. And then when you've got senior NCOs who are amazing like they are and powerful, but we all make mistakes, or maybe we're not tuned in sometimes, and it can be challenging to step up. I've seen two things happen in my career in that situation. I've seen officers who are very intimidated, and so they overcompensate and they take charge and alienate themselves, and then they'll fail, or they get run over by their NCOs and are no longer leading. So you got to find that right balance. And so I had Sergeant Izell, everybody knew him. That guy was the smoothest, coolest, most relaxed. Nothing got that guy. He was perfect yin and yang for me at the time. And I learned a lot. He would come over and pop one of his cigarettes up and be like, "Sir, let's have a talk." And yeah. He was a great guy. I haven't heard much from him.
I would love to connect with Easy Izell. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, what a great guy. What a great guy. We're here with Lieutenant Colonel retired Scott Caldwell. So tell me about Ranger School. Did you go to Ranger School after you got back from the war, or when was that? Before you became a lieutenant?
So I came back in. I mean, I had wanted to fly. That was my thing. And I did pass my flight physical when I went to the advanced camp during college in our LTC. But back then, when it came time for commissioning, you didn't know your place on the OML. When I was a professor of military science, was my last assignment. And in modern days, you knew where you stood, so you can kind of juggle your branch picks, and you could war game to make sure you got the branch that you wanted. But it was very, very not transparent back then, and I wanted active duty more than anything. So I picked air defense, which was not a branch that was as highly often selected, and so I knew I could get that branch, and I wanted active duty to do that. So I had passed my flight physical. So I came in, I went to the basic course down at Bliss, and then I went to jump school, and then I immediately went to Ranger School. I was all there. So I went March to July. I got recycled in the mountains. And while I was in the mountains, they closed the school because they did the best Ranger competition. So normally recycle is like 2 weeks. And, I was there for 6 weeks, and you lost so much weight after the first two phases, and there was 66 of us there, and all we did was I worked in the dump all day picking up trash, and then at night we did training all night. all that time. So it was probably good for me because I learned a lot during that time. I think I wasn't quite tuned in to what they were really looking for. It was difficult. It was really challenging. The first phase, they got 500 people show up and they got 300 slots, and they got to get rid of 200 people, and they just crank on you until you quit to try to get the numbers down by the second phase. And the mountains was physically miserable, up and down, carrying all the gear and stuff. So the recycle was good for me. It turned me in, and they took those of us that were recycled. Usually they spread you out. So the next class came in, and they ended up, the whole squad was missing from this platoon. And so they took a squad that we had been training together, and we just became a squad. And we all knew each other. We'd been together for a long time. And once again, my two partners were NCOs. You don't wear rank there, but you all talk to each other.
Oh, yeah.
And so we pulled each other through. But it was difficult, but I'm so glad I went, because I pulled on that experience the rest of my career. I still pull on it, because nothing can ever suck that bad. I could never be as tired or as hungry, or as miserable as what that was. So anything after that, okay, I can deal with this. It's not a problem.
Oh, yeah.
So glad that I gutted it out.
Let's take a minute and watch this video that I made for us here. Let's just check it out.
You should come watch you're on this video. Oh, good Lord, 17 years old.
Seagulls flying overhead, towels down in the sand, little crabs walking over our legs, and we were together just like lovers should have been. Like the changing tides, you have changed your mind, and now you're no longer mine. But last summer you were holding my hand. Last summer you were laying in my bed. Last summer we were more than just friends. But that was last summer. That was last summer. And I miss the salt in my hair, and I miss your emerald stare, and I wish you were still here in your red sundress, watching the sunset by the pier. In your red sundress, watching the sunset by the pier. Last summer, you were holding my hand. Last summer, you were laying in my bed. Last summer, we were more than just friends. But that was last summer. That was last summer.
There we are, everybody. We're here with Lieutenant Colonel retired Scott P. Caldwell. That's a little video, a tribute slideshow that I made for him, and thanks for hanging out. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It
20 pictures in there.
It's morphed, as I started doing this. I'm like, well, let's get some pictures, and let's as the new one of the things that kicked this off to the second level was I had a soldier, Sergeant Mason, in January of last year. He died of throat cancer from the burn pits, and I didn't know it. I didn't understand that he was sick until I found out he was in hospice and he couldn't even talk. And again, after Maggot had gotten sick, I had done like 8 or 10 interviews and just kind of dropped it off. And when I found out Sergeant Mason was sick, and I was just like, that was when Joe and I really kicked it off. So we've been doing this a little over a year now, and we appreciate you being with us here. We've been doing this live recently because we realized that if anybody was ever really going to listen to this and watch it, it really is a kind of a live kind of thing. It's an opportunity for you to tell your story, and we hope that eventually people will want to tune in and watch their loved ones and get their stories. We believe that everybody's a hero. You don't have to be in the service to be a hero. Everybody has a mom, right? Your mom's your hero. That's the way it is, So yeah, we're here with Lieutenant Colonel retired Scott P. Caldwell, the pilot and the ranger and the air defender and the Air National Guard guy. And all kinds of things.
Tell that story.
All kinds of things. So, tell me about your family. Look, here's Melanie Thomas, my uncle, my hero. Love you. Yeah. Tell me about family.
Niece.
What does family? How does that play into your life?
Yeah, I was gone obviously quite a lot, like everybody else was around. And whenever I did come home on leave, I always tried to make time to visit with my family as much as I could. I wish I would have, can't go back in time. I just recently lost Melanie's father, my oldest brother. Melanie's my niece, and she's an Air Force veteran as well, and she's an amazing person. And I just lost my oldest brother in December to cancer, and we had just kind of reconnected in a way. He was an amazing hero. He was a lifelong law enforcement officer, did so many things, but we just got together again and probably only visited a few times throughout my career just because we were in different places and didn't make the effort to make it happen. So I do regret that, but I am grateful for this last couple of years that we did have the time together. I have two grown kids now. My son did his Army tour, and he was a Black Hawk crew chief, which kind of amazed me because I didn't think he would have any interest. I never pushed him or pressured him to join the service, but he did, and he really excelled at it. He had to get medically retired because he got hurt. So he's in Colorado and been through college, and he's just he's so smart. It's incredible. He was like me in high school, and all of a sudden something happened to him when he went to college, and now he's this total brainiac. And then my daughter, she lives in Ohio there, and has got my two grandsons there. She's an amazing mom, and hoping to try to see if we can get her out here to Reno at some point, and maybe so I can have more time with her and more time with my grandsons. But, I always worried my whole career dragging those kids around. I lived and worked in more than 37 different countries. Wow. Mostly because of the last 12 years, my CA time as a NATO evaluator. But, we went to Germany, and I thought, man, I'm moving around every 2 years. I think a lot of times NCOs get to sit in places a little bit more often than we were forced to move around more. And I thought, I scarred these kids. I think my daughter had 4 high schools in 4 years, which is really hard. But it turns out they turned out to be these incredible people. And I think they're more resilient. I think they're more worldly. They're more open to change and new things. And I think it made them a lot stronger. So I don't feel so bad about that. And then I met my true soulmate, who's sitting over here working. Annika was my CA world. Annika was my counterpart. She was a humanitarian for most of her career. She's from Finland, but she was in all the horrible war zones. But rather than being there with a platoon of armed friends, she was there by herself, working refugees, displaced persons, human trafficking, development stuff. She's really an amazing person. And because we had these similar experiences, we're able to talk about it and understand. When we came back to the States, she was both at JROTC and at NTC as an advisor, a humanitarian advisor. and a role player. So she would help teach deploying units about the humanitarian community that was out there that shared the same battle space. She loved to be out there. She missed her calling. She should have been a soldier. She was out there with her map and her vehicle, and she had her OC radio and her coffee press, and out in the desert just rolling around doing her thing. She loved to do that. And so she's a great partner to have. We share so many interests, and I'm super fortunate to have stumbled into her.
Amen. That's cool. That's cool.
Chance. Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me about you know, being in the Gulf, right? You're over there with these guys that you're just meeting, and you're over there waiting and waiting and learning, and you're just out just in the middle of the desert in tents sometimes, and other times not, and it was crazy times back over there.
Yeah.
You just really didn't know. Do you remember a time, being, maybe any time in your career where you were in danger, or maybe you were having to cower in fear, or maybe help someone that had been hurt or something?
Mm, I don't know about cower and fear, but I do remember specifically so I had a deployment, I had Desert Storm, and then I had a deployment as a G5 and 1AD in Iraq, and then I deployed with my NATO unit, Land Component Command out of Heidelberg, and I was the chief of operations for CIMIC for ISAF, which was what NATO calls civil affairs, basically. But this was Desert Storm, and I know Mario's on here, and he will remember. I don't know if Joe's on here, but we got over there, and it was all the jokes about being the speed bump and everything. We were there super early, and I got pulled out, and I was in Charlie Battery, and I got pulled out and put in the new Delta with Captain Underhill was in charge of. And it was myself, and then Joe got attached to me as my Stinger section, and they pushed us. And I tried to find it on the map because I tried to find the name, and I couldn't find it. And it was right up on the Kuwait border. It was this little triangular shape, abandoned airstrip. There was a little village nearby. There was about 100 dead camels all over this airstrip. Well, they pushed us up there, and they flew in an infantry company. And so we set up our air defense there with a perimeter with those guys. And the mission was that if the tanks came across the border, they were going to send Apaches up to us. They were going to move forward, make a strike. They were going to come back to the airfield, reload, make a second strike, and then they were going back south. At the time, General, I forget now, what was his name? It was older, the CG.
Johnson?
Johnson, yeah. He actually came up to get a briefing. And when we talked about it, we were like, okay, well, after the Apaches make the second strike and leave, what do we do? And they're like, well, you need to get out of the way as best you can. And there was an infantry captain there, and they didn't have any vehicles. And so we had our Vulcan platoon vehicles and Joe's Stinger section vehicles. And so we sat there several nights talking about, well, how are we going to get out of the way? Because we're right on the main avenue of approach. And what are we going to do with all these grunts? And how many can we pile onto a vehicle? The engineers came up and they dug us in. If I stood on the hood of my vehicle, I could just barely see out of the hole up there. And then we had Terry Sergeant. His first name was Terry. He was a TDAR platoon leader. Do you remember Terry? If you say the name, I'll know it. I can see his face. He was a wild man, and he had a TDAR section, and he was with us as well. So I got to learn how to, use that. And Joe had set up on the high ground all around a really great Stinger positions, and they went out every day. And, the Vulcans were dug in, and it was really cool. But we were kind of sweating it because, we were like, yeah, I know we can hold these guys off, but then we have to get out of the way. And where are we going to go? So that was a pretty cool mission. Obviously, nothing ever happened. We stayed up there for a few weeks. It was really, really hot up there, miserable. But that was a neat mission. And then, of course, in Baghdad, I was with 1st Armored Division, and we went in there right after 3rd Infantry Division kind of occupied the place. And then just being up there the whole time, I was on the airfield for a while, and it was constantly every night, some mortars and rockets, and you had a couple of rows of sandbags around your tent, only about 2 feet high, and you could hear the thunks, and you roll off the bed and lay on the floor for a little while, waiting to see if they would, come your way. And we had the big voice. I went into the green zone then and established what we call the governorate support team. So if you remember, the Coalition Provisional Authority was in charge of the country because there wasn't any government. And they had their footprint, and then 1AD footprint was right on top in the city. We had 5 brigades, and so it was kind of like a liaison team between the two. And we had the big voice, which was some kind of big loudspeaker radar system, and they would detect rockets or mortars, and it would come on and give you these sounds. And I lived in a house there with a bunch of civil affairs majors. They had the major's house and the colonel's house, and it was about a 2-mile walk through the city. And I remember it's like almost every time, 5 o'clock, you get ready to go back to the hooch, and we'd have those rocket attacks. So I do remember running from building to building and rubble, waiting for a couple of rockets to come in, and the big voice was going off, and running to the next one, and so, I don't know. I don't know if I was ever super scared, because I guess you'd never thought it could happen to you, but you sure thought about it. And we lost some folks in 1AD. Of course, after a while, that's when the IEDs started to come. That was when they first started. And those things were scary because you never knew where they were and moving around. And back then, there was no I didn't have any uporbit vehicles. I had no IBA. We were wearing Vietnam era flak vests, and open Humvees with sandbags on the floor. And that's all we had. And so it was an interesting deployment for sure.
Yeah, I saw you, sitting in the back of one of the trucks, with your weapon there, and you're like all alone and unafraid, army of one or something, and it was like, wow,
Yeah, the GST, we had these reserve civil affairs guys, because I was active duty civil affairs was very small, and I was the deputy G5, and so I was there, and these folks were all reservists, and they each had a functional area: police, law, fire, food, and they had to go out in the city all the time to check on the different areas, some ministries they were working with. And during the first half of the deployment, it was just us. We had us in our vehicles, and you just go out and you look around sometimes. And no offense to anybody who's in the reserves there, but I'm going out with 3 or 4 of these reserve CA folks who might not be the most highly infantry skill, combat skill trained folks, but they were out there, no radios or anything. And it wasn't until the second half of the deployment when they gave a few Cav troops came into the green zone, and then you would schedule with them, and they would escort you around, because it was hard, easy to get lost there. And so, yeah, those were interesting times for sure.
Oh yeah. Do you remember a particular time in the 82nd where you really was proud of being a paratrooper and being part of the traditions of an 82nd Airborne Division paratrooper?
I think the time when I was most proud of it, to be honest, was when I wasn't there. It's Rob.
How about that?
One of my mentors as well. What a great guy.
I know.
I think I was more proud of it when I wasn't in the division, because when I was there, I was surrounded by everybody else, and it was great. But I took all that stuff with me. And to be honest, division level, 1AD was the only other real division that I was in. I was in CA within the 96th Civil Affairs Battalion, which back then was the only active duty battalion, and we were supporting I was supporting 7th Group with my small team. And so being in 1AD, being on the staff, it was a different division. And I was proud that I had that patch on my other shoulder, and I used everything that I learned there to try to change things I saw around me, and the other sections, because a lot of people weren't born and raised in the division. And so I carried those skill sets and things that stick in my head that came from Captain Underhill. I wanna say, soldiers only do well what leaders check. A standard ignored is a standard set. Um, what else? Oh man, I could think. I got a whole bunch of them, and they still stick. I still use them now when I talk to cadets in the program. And so I think I was more proud of that. And I think sometimes people looked at that and go, okay, this person was trained, I think, in a different place, and let's listen to what he has to say. So yeah, for sure. And even now, I'm proud of that because I still
It's
wear. I mean, don't have a, if I'd have a beard and some kind of ponytail probably if I could, but I still have to wear the uniform now. And to be honest, I just coughed up the money and bought the new AGSU, uniform. Here we are, 80 years after World War II. We're back in the same uniform again. So, and I love it. So I am proud to have that patch on there.
oh yeah.
It
There's
connects you. And I like to read military history, and it connects you all the way back through everything. And I'm honored to be part of that.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It's an absolute blessing to have stood next to the folks that we stood next to, right?
Yeah.
Mario Ramirez, Frank Robinson, Joe Stout,
Yep.
Sean Lear, Underhill. It's just crazy to think, and General Underhill was such a there was just something about the guy as a captain, right? As a captain, you're like, that guy's special, you know?
Oh, absolutely. So, and
Yeah.
you look on your list. Did you have any friends or buddies? I'm really an introvert, to be honest, and I only realized that probably within the last handful of years because my wife Annika is as well. I didn't really seek out buddies, but I was very close back during that time uh, with Jeff Underhill. Yeah, because when I came back, I was a Stinger platoon leader with him in Delta Battery. Well, that existed for a while, and then when he took Alpha Battery, he asked me to come over as the XO, and I was like a dry sponge. I soaked up everything he had. I learned just uh, almost everything who I am, who I was as an officer throughout my career. I got from him. I mimic. I don't want to say I mimicked him, but I copied him. But I drew on everything I learned from him when I got my company command. He was at branch at that time. He was the air defense branch guy, and I left Bragg in '93. Went to flight school, and I went to the advanced course. And they do a branch visit, and they said, so what do you want to do? I'm like, well, I guess you get a long tour overseas or a short tour because you've been stateside. And I'm like, all right, well, it doesn't matter, give me a long tour, that's fine. And I get my orders, and I'm going back to Bragg, and I'm going back to the 82nd, and I'm like, what the hell? And so I called him up and I said, did you have anything to do with this? And he had gone over to the aviation branch manager. She said, hey, this guy needs to go back to division, that's where he belongs. So I was fortunate enough to have another tour in division down in 282 Aviation. And so, I was always down in the Air Defense Battalion area a few times, checking
Oh
out
yeah.
who was still over there and
Oh yeah.
checking with folks. And yeah, yeah. So I would say I was very close with him just because he was my mentor and followed him along with his career.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So, dude, did you go to jump master school while you were in third of the fourth or later?
Yeah, yeah. When we came back, I was in Delta Battery. I was a single platoon leader then, and I got to go. And like I said, that was pressure because, when Jeff sends you to a school, you don't want to fail that school. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure Sergeant Maggot was there, I believe.
Hmm.
And you were there at the same time, or
No, no.
you weren't?
So here's it looks like what our timeline was. I was in Korea during Gulf Storm. I left right before Desert Storm happened, and was in Korea. Got stopped, lost over there, and came back to brag after y'all had gone over
Okay.
there. So I left Bravo Battery. When I came back to Charlie Battery. But about the
Okay.
time that you left to go to Alpha Battery, you left Charlie Battery to go to Alpha Battery is about the time that I would come back to Charlie Battery.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was in Delta. I was Delta when we came back just for a little while that existed until they crushed it. And
Right.
yeah, I went to Alpha Battery.
It is just so neat. I talked to the current battalion commander of Third of the Fourth last night. It was amazing, so awesome.
Hmm.
And they're deploying and going out to stand on the front line in defense for our nation, and I'm so proud of them. And he was jumping out of an airplane today. So I hope that that he had a great jump, and my friend also has his son jumped out of the same chalk aircraft today. So we've had,
Oh
and
wow.
I know your son was airborne, right, or is
No,
airborne?
no, he
No,
was aviation. Yep.
I got you. I got you. It's neat to
Yeah.
see the follow on, forces,
Right.
as they go through their military career. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really cool. What
Absolutely.
um What was it like going to be a pilot? Did you enjoy, Rucker and flight school and all those kinds of things?
It was kind of neat because I went there as a first lieutenant. I was 93, so I was maybe a year or so, year and a half back from Desert Storm, and I was there with all the new butter bars just coming in, and it was there. I went to flight school. It was following their OBC, and then after that, I went to the aviation advanced course, and then I was the bonehead lieutenant with all the captains who were there, and I didn't have any, transfer and branches like that. Flight school was challenging. I mean, all the studying and for that, a lot of pressure. And we were flying the Hueys back then, and I had this crusty old Vietnam veteran guy with probably 10, 15,000 hours in that thing. It was a lot of fun because that had been my dream since the beginning in 81. So it took me, 12 years to finally realize that dream of doing that. And then I did want to fly 60s. So back then it was basically your class standing. They had X number of slots for transitions to different kind of aircraft, and they just went right down the line. And so I got the transition into the Black Hawk, and then getting to go back to Bragg was, that was the deal. But it was kind of interesting because, again, I told you I grew up. I grew up in Third of the Fourth, 88 and 82nd, and even inside division, not all battalions are the same. And I'll tell you this short story to prove my point and why I'm still so proud of the things I learned having been in Third of the Fourth. So I'm there in 282 Aviation. I'm the assistant S3 for the battalion, and it's every officer's dream to get a line company because you want to fly more, you want to have your own ships and everything. Like, okay, that's what I'd like to do. But you got to do your time on the staff, and I will never forget impromptu sitting together with the S1 at the time, and there was about 3 or 4 other captains around doing different things, and they were all waiting for command. And the S1 he had his notes and his pencil and his note paper, and he was asking, well, what company do you guys want? Because we had a maintenance company, we had a couple line companies, we had Charlie, which was the special missions company with all the CSAR birds we had, and they got to me, and guys were talking about what they wanted, and they got to me. He's like, well, what company do you want to command? And I was like, well, where I was raised, you don't put in or wait for a company. You take what company is offered to you. You prove yourself to the battalion commander, and then if you're offered a command, then you accept it. And immediately I was put on the list to have the headquarters company
No
because
way.
nobody wanted that, right? I actually moved ahead of like 4 people to get command because nobody wanted that.
Right.
And I'm sure that they might have been laughing up their sleeves thinking like, oh, thank God he said that. But to be honest, I had an awesome command because I was new in aviation. I didn't have platoon leader time as an aviator, but I knew ground. I knew the groundwork. I knew the ground fight. And we had so much fun because we did stuff with that headquarters company We would not come in the daytime. We would come in at night. We would goggle up. We would go out and do night convoys, driving with nods, refuel stuff. We would do, when we went to JLTC one time, we did an air assault in to establish, our fob there. And I loved working with all those sections. And that was probably one of I didn't get to fly much. Every flight was every 60 days. If you don't fly the 61st day, you have to have a check ride. So it's like every day in flight was a check ride. It was like being in flight school again. But I absolutely loved it. I don't regret it at all. And that was probably one of my most favorite tours. But again, there are different standards and different units, even within the division. And I think I brought what I learned with me from 3rd to the 4th ADA into that assignment. And it made me successful again. So yeah, that was ground zero for me.
Oh, that's interesting. So cool. So you got to do a company command as an a headquarters company, aviation commander. That's really cool. That's a cool thing. So, I didn't really think about that much. What's it like to fly a Black Hawk helicopter? Is that cool?
It's pretty amazing. Yeah. I mean, we flew the Hueys in flight school and you would do your different checks and they would teach you about the aircraft. When you stuck your head up into the tail boom, into what they called the hell hole, those UH-1s, and you could see inside, you could see the beer can, the aluminum beer cans that were riveted in these bullet holes. These were aircraft that were flown in Vietnam. I mean, that's how old they were. And I think I had 9 emergency landings in flight school because we had different system failures because the aircraft were so old. But it was amazing to fly a piece of history. But, you really had to fly it. You got 2 pedals and, 2 sticks, and you really had to manage it. And to get in the Black Hawks like a Cadillac, you have those trim switches on the control arm and on the pedals, and you hold those switches and you set that thing up and just take your hands off of it, and it could fly itself. It was an amazing aircraft, lots of different missions that it could do. My best flying was in Central America. I was the JTF Bravo in Honduras, and I was the flight ops officer we had one company down there, but we had the old Alpha model Black Hawks. But flying around Central America, the scenery was just incredible. The missions we did were very interesting. We did a lot of counter drug stuff. We did a lot of VIP stuff. We flew one mission. We flew the president of Costa Rica and his military equivalent of probably our chief of staff up to a graduation ceremony so in Costa Rica, they don't really have a police or a military. They kind of have an armed force, which does both jobs. And those guys are trained by U.S. Special Forces guys up on this special camp on the border of Costa Rica and Nicaragua. It's a really cool place. And so we flew those guys up there and went to the graduation ceremony. It was a neat, we did a lot of medical, we call them med readies there. So during the summers, the Guard folks that needed to train medical units would come down there. We'd fly them up into remote mountain villages, and they would give vaccinations, pull teeth, do cleft palate surgery, stuff like that. So, we got to do a lot of really cool flying while we were there. I got to do a lot more flying there than I did at Bragg. Bragg was kind of boring flying, but flying down there was pretty awesome.
I bet. Yeah. That is cool. Have you ever been in a position in the helicopter where you thought you were going to crash?
Oh yeah, a couple times. Those Alpha models were they're weak, when you're flying at altitude there sometimes. And I remember I had this, and once again, it's the NCOs of the aviation are the crusty old warrant officers. And I had this crusty old W-2, and we were flying a med-ready team into this mountain village, and they had hacked a little LZ up, but it was probably 5,000 feet or something like that. And he was letting me on the controls and coaching me to come in. It was a really small LZ, and we were at altitude, and I came in too slow, and because I was kind of creeping up on it, and I kept pulling up the collective and pulling it for more power, and pretty soon there wasn't anything left, and the alarms went off, and the rotor started to drop, and he took the controls, and he had to do kind of a dive to pick up speed again. And yeah, I had to go back and change the flight suit that day because it was definitely something new. So I learned a lot of things down there about flying.
Oh wow, yeah. So I guess I don't even think about it, altitude and all that stuff, and the air being thinner and those kinds of things. So
Yeah,
yeah, thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing.
yeah,
I you gotta have a great uh, uh, appreciation for the maintenance folks, right? That keep
yeah,
those aircraft flying. And you got to know that when that crew chief signs off on the maintenance, that it's done and it's ready to fly, and because you could crash, you could
yeah. Oh yeah,
crash.
yeah. They don't glide well. I remember. So we used to do these simulated engine failures in flight school with a Huey, and so he would just he'd roll the power off, and he would tell you, okay, look out. You look out in front, and you had to pick somewhere, pick a landing zone, and then you would start to basically glide down to it. So you're looking out the screen in the front, right? So when I did the transition to the 60s, the first time he pulled off one of those. He's like, okay, I want you to pick an area. And I'm looking out the windscreen and I'm pointing to it. He's like, this ain't no Huey. He's like, you need to look at the chin bubble down by your feet because we're going to drop like a rock right straight down
Oh,
the ground. And he's like, you get one pull. He said, you got one pull to cushion that landing. And after you make that pull, there's no inertia left in that rotor blade. So whatever altitude you're at after that, you're going to hit the ground. So they don't glide well. And some people ask me, well, why didn't you do an aviation career after you retired? And I said, well, I didn't have enough hours to probably be competitive with anybody. But to be honest, I don't know if I'd be comfortable with the maintenance routines in the civilian world where you can cut corners and, money's maybe not all there that you need because for that very reason. And I trusted the military system, but not so sure about the civilian world.
what made you get out of aviation?
Um, so I did my tour at Bragg, and then I went to Honduras and did that short tour. And then we used to have what they called functional tours. So they wanted you as an officer to go do something else for a short period. These were tours in areas, the functional areas that were not branches. And so civil affairs, public affairs, R&D, and there was a handful of them. Civil affairs was interesting to me because of, I think, my time in Central America, my time in Desert Storm with the few people that we interacted with. I was really interested in other cultures and other languages. And this offered me the opportunity to compete for a free master's degree. And so I put in a packet for it. I got accepted for it. I got selected for the master's degree. I had already had a working knowledge of Spanish because of my time in Central America. They had actually slated me to go and learn how to speak Thai. I'm like, where am I going to use that language except in Thailand, right? So I went to see the little old lady in tennis shoes, who's behind every decision for everyone's career, and took her some flowers, and she put me in the Spanish group. So it was a two years of training. You had language training, you had the cultural studies course, and then you had 2-year master's degree stuffed into 1 year. And then it was being on a team, which was you probably could have left me on the team as a captain for the rest of my career, and I'd have been happy. The CA teams, then you had 3 18 series guys on your team. You had an intel guy, you had a medic, and you had just an operator. So working with those guys was incredible because of the skill sets that they had, the autonomy that we had. Hey, here's 30 grand in cash. You got a $2 million budget. You guys go down to Ecuador and Peru and help them establish a national demining program and go work with the embassy and go do that. And I'm like, that was my thing, because you were then just problem solving on your own, working with these guys who were super skilled. Usually you had an A team that would go with you for some of those missions because they were doing side missions. And I really, really liked being immersed in the culture. And then, of course, I spent the majority of my CA time in the Middle East speaking
Oh
Spanish.
no.
Speaking Spanish, right? So then while I was in that, they made a decision that you could stay in your functional area. You'd still be aviation branch, but you could stay in your functional area and only compete for promotion against guys who were in the functional area. I was a major by then, and usually you have to have your branch qualifying assignment. You're looking for that XO S3 time, and I said, you know what, I didn't have enough time in aviation to be competitive, and I think I'm going to get left by the wayside if I try to compete in that. So I said, I'm going to stick in civil affairs because I'm getting in here at the ground level with the other captains, and I'm on a more equal footing. And then again, about a year or two later, it became a branch. And so I decided to transfer, over to that and I really had fallen in love with it by then. I really did like, I guess, building things maybe more than breaking things. And it was the culture piece that I just fell in love with, working with people in different countries. And so I guess that's why I left aviation. Sometimes I miss it once in a while, but I wouldn't have done it different. I wouldn't have stayed in it. I wouldn't have done it differently.
Tell me some places that you've been and some projects that you've worked on.
Well, interesting I guess in Baghdad there, there was so much stuff to be done. We had these things called Project Neighborhood, and we had so much money. There was money. I used to watch them bringing in pallets of money into that country to spend on development projects. And Project Neighborhood were projects where they would assign them usually to the engineer battalions, and they would go into a neighborhood and just do all kinds of clean up trash, build stuff, fix the roads, fix the sewer stuff. I did my own Project Neighborhood on a base that was a former Fedayeen Saddam base, which were the kind of crazy, what would you call them? The fanatics, special ops guys that Saddam had. And all those bases were pretty torn up. But we went in there and built apartments in there for people. And that was pretty cool, working with some of the locals and the contractors and building apartments for folks that didn't have anywhere to live, managing that, building a medical clinic and coordinating with NGOs to get, medical supplies in there for people to be able to, have some medical treatment. Those were some pretty cool things. That reminded me when I was talking about Spanish and talking about that on your questions. You talk about, have you ever done anything that was not ethical? and it remind nothing like outing yourself, right? That reminded me of something because of my Spanish language skills. So I'm at BIAP one day, and the chief of staff comes in and says, "Hey, they've got a guy at the checkpoint. I think you need to go out and talk to this guy." And they put him down. At the checkpoint because he got belligerent with folks. And so I'm like, okay, so we don't have any CA guys around. So I was the G5 then. So I drove out to the gate, and they got this guy there. And the poor guy, he's got dimples all over the side of his head from where they ground his face into the rocks when they put him down the checkpoint. So he's there with another guy. Well, this guy, he's got his hand is gone on one arm. And his buddy spoke Spanish for some reason. He studied Spanish in college. So we used him kind of as the interpreter. So this young guy had been a sewing machine repair guy in Baghdad before the war started. And when Third ID came through, they hired him to help clear munitions, which is a bad thing. So this guy's running around picking up spent and unspent munitions, duds around the city for these guys. And he had something that exploded, took his hand off. So they took him to a medical unit there and kind of sewed him, did some surgeries, fixed him up. But they promised him a hand, that they were going to do a surgery. And this guy had seen the Star Wars movie. I think it was the second one. You remember where Luke Skywalker got his hand. He got that high-speed hand. And that's what this guy wanted. That's what he said they promised him. And he couldn't work as a sewing machine repairman anymore because it was very fine, delicate work. He wanted to open up like a convenience store in the neighborhood. So I'm like, okay, this really sucks. He showed me pictures of his little baby he had and everything. So down in the green zone, there was a hospital, trauma hospital there. So I took him there one day and talked to one of the docs. And I got to tell you, those docs, man, it reminded me of the movie MASH. Those guys looked so worn out, so tired because they were so busy with stuff. So this guy agreed that he could do a couple surgeries on this dude to shape him to get one of those prosthetic slip-ons that had like the little claw finger and
Right.
like a strap. So like if you chug his shoulder, he wasn't very happy that that's the hand that he was going to get. He was still looking for the Star Wars hand. So anyway, they took care of him. They got that for him. And then he came back to see me again. He said, "Hey, I really would like to open a store, but don't have any money." So I was working with a contractor building these apartments. And I had actually hired an interpreter named Hyder who worked with me. He had been a captain in the Republican Guards during the Desert Storm. And he was in the south of Iraq, and he was one of the groups that had risen up against the government to fight. And of course, they lost because we didn't come any farther north. And he had spent 4 years in a refugee camp in Saudi Arabia, going crazy. So I hired him, and it was his cousin. He came with me as an interpreter from Germany, and his cousin was my construction guy. So I said, "You know what? This is what we're going to do. You're going to bid this new construction project, and I want you to bid over. I want you to bid way over what it's going to cost." And I think at the time, I had him bid like $7,000 over. And so, back then, if you win the bid, you just get a sandbag full of cash. So I got a sandbag full of cash, and I said, "You're going to take that because I don't want to touch it. But you're going to take that extra, and you're going to link up with this guy, and you're going to give it to him." So he did that. And this guy came back to me, I don't know, we were over there for 18 months. He came back to me a few months later with pictures of his store. So he got to open up his cool little convenience store, and I felt like, oh shit, I'm going to go to jail for this because somebody's going to find out about. But I felt like it was the right thing to do. It was, injury payment to this guy. Who's going to hire people like that to go pick up munitions? That's pretty jacked up. But there's a funny story that I just remember from.
Oh, thanks for sharing. Yeah, thanks for sharing. It's really wild and interesting. By the way, I have a friend of the show, a guest on the show from Iraq, and he somehow is unable to give me a proper address. Can you give me an address to a place in Iraq? Do you know what an address would look like to a place in Iraq? Any idea?
No.
All right.
I got a friend. I got a guy that I worked with. That actually helped me with the medical clinic. And it was, man, let's see, when was I there? 2005. So about 2008 or 9, another guy, a CA guy I worked with, got in contact with me because this guy named Mohammed, he was in Jordan. And his brother had been murdered because this guy Mohammed was working with me, and he was trying to get to come to the States. And so we helped him write some letters, helped him get to the States, and he ended up being there by me in Florida, where I retired out of. I still have contact with him on Facebook, and he could probably be able to help us with. He's done an amazing job. His 3 girls were young when they came here, and they're all fluent in English. They're amazing college students and college graduates working for Northrop Grumman and all this stuff. This guy made the total transition, but I can put you in contact with him. He could probably help you out with something like that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm here with Lieutenant Colonel retired Scott P. Caldwell, the Ranger, is here with us tonight, and we're having fun. What makes you giggle about that?
I wasn't the only Ranger running around sort of the 4th ADA back then.
Hey, no, you weren't the only one, but
No.
but there wasn't like there was a bunch of you. Wasn't like there was a
No,
bunch
it was
of you.
probably hard to get to for an air defender. I would have liked to have gone to, regiment, but I think they had one staff weenie spot there for an air defender, but I was never going to get that spot.
Yeah,
But
yeah. So
was great.
what was it like? So you did many years deploying to different places. Was that what you do? Would you go and deploy?
I deployed had Desert Storm, and I did an Iraq deployment with 1AD, and then I did a deployment to Afghanistan with NATO. I traveled more with NATO because I was a CIMIC evaluator. So I was in the Land Component Command headquarters in Heidelberg, and they put together a unit. So, you know, how division has its mission rotations, and NATO has the same thing. So the NATO corps take turns assuming mission status. And before they could be approved to do that, they had to do a command post exercise. So there we had evaluators from all the different branches that we would fly to. I mean, we went to Poland, Portugal, France, went to Turkey twice, Hungary, Romania. I went to Russia once actually to do briefings for a week. Believe it or not, the Russians wanted to establish a peacekeeping brigade. So three of us went to Russia for a week to give them some briefings on our different branches and stuff. So I got to travel around quite a lot and do the exercises, and that's where I got around.
Oh, that's got to be interesting. That's
Yeah,
got to be
it was
interesting. Was there?
amazing.
Would you ever find a place you got and you were nervous? You were like, "What in the world am I doing here?"
Russia was, yeah. I mean, there was only three of us that went there, three goober majors going there. And we were like, okay, a peacekeeping brigade. That's interesting. And so they actually had nobody spoke English. They had cadets from their academy who came who could speak English and they translated. So it was so painful. Like a 1 hour class was 4 hours.
Oh
You'd
no.
say something, he'd say something, you'd say something. Um, but man, going through, we were in Samara, Russia, and it was like stepping back into the 1930s, man. Same thing even in Romania and Hungary. Yeah, they have isolated places where it's super modern and you might be somewhere in the States, there's a mall and stores and restaurants, but everything else was like 1930s infrastructure. That was, and you know, you're in your hotel and they give us these briefings like, hey, look, they're going to follow you around everywhere you go, and you probably got cameras and microphones in your hotel room, and you know, why does the lady who's doing the towel stare at me all the time? It was kind of creepy. Um, it took us out and got us some food and got us hammered. We had a lunch with the chief of staff of the Russian army who came down. You'd never want to have a lunch with somebody like that. There was 12 of us at the table, and I swear 12 to 14 bottles of vodka went during that lunch. Every 3 minutes it was a toast. And I'm not a big drinker, man. And even the Russian across from me was putting water in his glass after like about a half an hour, man. Um, but yeah, that was a little. You're like, what's keeping us from disappearing here? We landed at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's a tiny little airport. We were there for like 4 hours. Everybody who got off the plane had to go behind this curtain, like one or two at a time, and they were back there for like 20 minutes. And you're like, okay, what kind of stuff are they going to be asking me if I disappear behind the curtain, looking through my luggage? And then finally, this a couple of military guys came in a van and rescued us out of the line and got us out of there. But yeah, that was some fun times.
What was it like deciding to hang it up? Was there a was there a did you do a command time as a battalion commander?
So my command time was I was a professor of military science. So I was in our LTC, battalion commander. I don't consider that really command time, to be honest. I was a CA guy, and at the time there was only one civil affairs active duty battalion, so there wasn't a lot of places for you to go to command. I really wanted that job. That was the last thing I wanted to do. I had spent my 30 years sharing myself, I guess, and my experiences and my expertise all around the world, but I wanted to do it here. I wanted to do it for young people here. And so that's a hard cut to make. They're really picky about that PMS job. But I got lucky enough to get selected. I was at the Florida Institute of Technology down in Melbourne, Florida, which was truly the rocket scientist school. It used to be the science school for NASA because we were just down the road from Cape Canaveral. That was a cool assignment. I really liked it. I loved training the young kids, and I got to teach the seniors. So it was 3480A, 82nd Airborne, Underhill 101. I mean, I
Amen.
shared with them, hey, look, man, when you go to OBC and they teach you lots of concepts, and I went to the captain's career course. I went to the Latin American Staff College. You know, it was all done in Spanish and teach you concepts, but they don't give you the nuts and bolts details. Step one, do this. Step two, do that. And I was able to take that platoon leader or company commander time and say, this is the stuff that you need to, this is how you need to approach it. This is how you do a command philosophy. This is the NCOs you're going to meet. And this is how you need to keep your mouth shut and listen to them and do, you know, these things. So that was really fulfilling to be able to share that. And I did 3 years and I really wanted to stay. Branch was offering me to go to JiffyCom, which was actually disbanding at the time. And I had come back from Afghanistan and I really was like, you know what? I don't think I got the go to deploy again. I don't want to go to a deployment and be half-assed. I'm kind of tired. I was at the 30-year mark. Making colonel, probably that branch was probably not going to happen for me. I wasn't in with the movers and the shakers, I would say. So I thought, you know what? It's probably the time to go. And I will tell you, after I retired, I thought that was a humbling experience. And I'm sure maybe a lot of the guys out there had it. I thought, well, I won't have a problem transitioning. I mean, I've got a master's degree and I got all this experience and I know I can learn any job. Man, I applied for 33 jobs in 6 months. I got referred to the hiring official on 3. I got interviewed on 2 and I got offered 1. And I was like, wow, man, that was hurtful. And I was the executive liaison officer for WINSEC. So WINSEC used to be School of the Americas at Fort Benning. It was the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation. So I was the liaison between WINSEC and Congress, NORTHCOM, SOUTHCOM, headquarters DA, and which was kind of a cool job, but I sat at the Pentagon. And I will tell you, I had my beard on, I had my suit on, and I went to one of my first meetings up there, and I'm standing around, and everybody there's in uniform, and I'm in the corner feeling like the redheaded stepchild. And I thought to myself for 1 minute, shit, I made a mistake. I'm like, what? I was with these guys, and now they don't even pay any attention to me, even though they know I was in the service. You know, I'm retired. And I thought, damn, man, maybe I should have stayed in. And it took about another year before I went, oh, I can quit this job and go somewhere else, and I can go over here and do this. And I'm like, okay, I'm glad I retired now. I mean, it took a while to accept that because that's all I had done since I was 17. I had never had any other jobs, had done anything else except go to college. And it took a while for me to accept it and for it to feel right for me. And then, you know, I spent 2 years up there, and DC wasn't for me. Pentagon wasn't for me. I was a GS-14 up there, and I wanted to get back with kids. And so that's when I took my JRTC job. And I had a high school down in Fort Pierce, Florida for about 6 years. And that's when I found myself again. I'm like, yep, this is where I need to be. And I have so much to share. Those kids there were so impoverished, mostly first generation immigrants, Hispanic immigrants, Haitian immigrant kids, had needed to escape their poverty. And it's been so rewarding to share all those things and turn them on to all the things that they can do. So, you know, all these 3-4 ADA NCOs who have always lived inside me all these years, you know, all that stuff's coming right back out. And I know Mario's doing that same good work where he is. I know that Sergeant Major Locklear now is just on a DAI conference with him for a week. He's been doing that good work for 20 some years. And now I'm out here in Reno, and I have 35 instructors and about 2,000 kids. I don't have kids of my own necessarily, but I get to move around and, you know, interact with them, and it's super rewarding. Still wearing the uniform after, I don't know, 40 some years maybe.
Oh, you look great. It's awesome, right? Yeah.
I got to keep that belly off though, man, because my pants are doing the yo-yo thing. I let them out, and then I feel bad, and then I do some workouts and take it back in. So it's back and forth, you know.
That's
So,
right. That's
but I
right.
do like it.
Gotta get that grow as you grow belt. You can just
Man,
adjust as necessary.
before I retired, I had never had a surgery in my life. And since I was 50 now, I'm catching up to Annika. I think I've had 11 surgeries, knees, shoulders, elbow, hands. It's just falling apart, man.
Oh
And thinking,
wow.
yeah, maybe some of those landings were a little bit harder than I thought they were.
Oh my. Oh my.
So yeah, but we're still going. I see you guys out there on Facebook, a lot of times doing stuff, and I stay motivated. And it's great to stay in touch with everybody and see what everybody's still doing. And we hosted this little reunion here this last summer. I had no idea that there was some of the young. I call them the young crowd, as they aren't the oldies like me, except for Joe. Um, they all came out to the house out here because they've been having reunions here in Reno, I guess, for a while. And so Joe said, "Hey, we're going to be out there." I'm like, "Well, I got this little place. Why don't you come out here and we can put on a nice barbecue?" And I didn't know any of the guys, but you know the deal. You chew the same dirt. You're like instantly. We had an awesome time. We were here till late at night. Ate some great food. Told some good lies. And I'm hoping that maybe in a couple of years the reunion will come back around and get a little bit bigger, and we can get some of the old timers from our days to come as well.
Amen. Amen. Well, just so you know, put it on the calendar, August 5th and 6th in Nashville. The hotels out there, the links out there. If you want to know motel information, let me know. Get in touch with me. I can get you that. We'll post it on the website.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
But it's gonna be a big time. I'm looking forward to it. I already got rooms booked, and gonna be a big group. If it's one of those old school like Missile Inn kind of things with a
Oh,
balcony rooms, and you can stand out and
like a division convention kind of thing. Everybody gets their
yeah,
own little room and fill it up with liquor, and you just drift from room to room. Awesome.
right, and it's got a courtyard out in the middle, and so I'm sure we'll be able to get a keg of beer and drag it out there in a trash can, and
Yeah. Nashville's a
and
great place.
yeah, and so we're looking forward to it. It's going to be a great time. Of course, it'll be August, so it'll be nice and cool.
Oh
No
yeah.
issues at all.
We got air conditioning, man. We don't have to be miserable anymore. You know,
Oh man.
that's great.
Uh, so what is keeping your mind occupied? What's your hobby? What are you doing that you enjoy?
Well, we built a house when we came out here, and it was in a 55 plus community because I couldn't find anywhere else. All the Californians with the big money from the Bay Area are coming out here and buying everything up with cash, and the economy's gone through the roof. And so we bought some acreage out in the boonies. We bought 80 acres out there. We're like, you know what? We're going to build this little house out there, and there's like 200 wild horses out there and pronghorn, and it's just an incredibly beautiful place. And we bought this big RV, and we lived out there all last winter. And because of the COVID and the economy and the cost of things, these guys wanted like 1.2 million bucks to build 1,200 square foot house out there. And we said, ooh, I've been a public servant my whole life. That's not going to happen. So we lucked into a small place here in what's called Washoe Valley. It's in between Reno and Carson City. It's about 10 minutes from either one. I'm looking out the window right now, and the Sierra Nevada mountain range is right here. I could throw a rock at these 8,000, 11,000 foot peaks. The views are absolutely incredible. The weather out here is a high desert, so the weather is incredible. We have really mild winters, except up in the mountains, they've had about 80 feet of snow this year. But down here in the valley, we don't get it that way. So we got this small place. We got a couple of horses. So we've been taking care of horses now for about 2 years and learning how to ride them. And got a shop out here. And then when the guys were here for their reunion, they saw I got a 43 Willys MB military Jeep, and I've got a 52 M38A1 that's now in pieces down to the frame that I'm slowly working on restoring. Hopefully I'll have it done in time for the next reunion. And And the guys took a ride in the 43 when they were here last time. Everybody piled in, and I think Joe drove it around the block a couple of times. And so that's kind of a hobby, doing that a little bit. We'd like to maybe do some more camping and traveling. We have this RV here we have fun with. Annika is such a great partner. We spend time in Finland. Her family is there, and I never grew up with sisters. I had two brothers I grew up with, so now I got four sisters, and we go visit them quite a lot. Go back to Ohio a bit. Try to spend some time with my grandsons, 6 and 2 now. So we have to get them out to come out and visit a little bit more. My son came back in January, and he's turned into a whole frisbee disc golf geek, which is really cool sport. I kind of made fun of him at first, and he came out here and took me out, and I'm like, okay, now I'm all hooked into disc golf. It's a big thing out here, so we bought ourselves a few discs, and we start to kind of play around, something that I can do with him, when he comes out for a visit. I think I'm trying to sit still, if that makes sense. And I can only attribute it to, the military was the only thing I ever did my whole life. And because of where I grew up, it's always what's next. I can't not do it. I'm doing it in my job, that I'm working legacy projects. I can't not continue to improve my foxhole no matter what I do. And there's good in that, because I am an introvert. I re-energize being by myself. I love to fly fish. I got hooked on that, and I love to disappear up in the Truckee River runs right through the middle of Reno over here, and to go up on the border, California borders right here. The Donner Party, who spent time with the first original MREs eating each other back in the day. That all happened right up the highway here. So you go up into the mountains and disappear. You can be up there for 3-4 hours on the river and never see another person.
Wow.
It really re-energizes you. It's just beautiful. But I got to figure out how to slow down, because I think a few of my surgeries are because I broke myself because I'm doing stuff I probably shouldn't be doing. I'm getting a little better. Annika's good at trying to get me, why don't you just sit down and read a book for a few minutes? It's Sunday. How about we don't do anything but watch movies all day? And I'm like, okay, I can only do that for so long before I got to have a project. I'm outside at this. It's an older house. It needs a lot of work, and I do enjoy fixing that up. I got a lot of older neighbors around here, really nice people. Really friendly, helping them out sometimes. But again, I said it before that I lost my oldest brother, and I wish I would have slowed down more and spent more time with family. And that's something that I got to focus on a little bit now, and just enjoying every day, because I saw how fast everything can be taken from you in that battle. And enjoying and appreciating the partner that I have. We got 3 Rhodesian Ridgebacks here that share our lives. We do everything with. So we got the girls' dogs and the boy horses. So they keep us busy. But I'm sure, like everybody else, I'm always up for ideas from folks who have succeeded in how to just sit on the front porch and not do anything. That's hard. That's my biggest challenge.
Amen.
I see all the guitars you got behind you.
Yeah.
And the project you got going on, and you might be suffering from the same illness.
I love to learn new things. That's what I love to do. So I learned to video edit. I learned to play guitar. I learned to fly my drones. I learned to, I'm always learning, right? That's what we're always doing. We're always learning. And that's, I'm just one of those kind of people. And recently, I've been able to connect with guys like you, and we've been talking, and I believe that this is valuable. I think that these stories are valuable. What if you were going to look at your, those that come after you, and give them a tip? Here's Caldwell's tip. What do you tell these youngsters that you're with every day, teaching and coaching and mentoring? How do you relate to them? What advice would you give to someone?
What do I give to these guys? Well, the thing that I like to focus on mostly for JROTC, I think a lot of folks think that junior ROTC is just dressing kids up and teaching them how to march around, and that's kind of what I thought it was when I first started it. But because of where I was and the extreme poverty these kids lived in, I spent the first couple years um, mimicking my counterparts at different schools. It was about winning trophies and marching kids and shooting the air rifle team or whatever the hell it was. And after a while, I'm like, that's not what my kids need. These kids got to escape their poverty, man. I need to open them up to all the possible things they could do in this world. And I got to put them under my thumb and force them. Because when I would ask them, what are you going to do after high school? They'd be like, I'm going to go to, I call it the hand, the hand wave, go to college and get scholarships. Well, you're a senior. How many scholarships do you have? Oh, well, I haven't applied for any. Well, how many colleges have you applied to? Oh, I haven't. So you're not on track to do anything. And so I used to meet with these juniors and seniors one-on-one a few days a week, have these appointments up and say, let's get down to the nitty-gritty, and show me who you're applying to. And let's go fill out the FAFSA form and find you some federal aid money. To get you what I call, locked in, so that whether it doesn't have to be university, it can be a vocational, a technical trade. You can make more money doing that than you can anything else. But I think I was fortunate because when I grew up, my grandparents lived in my neighborhood, both sets. My mom's parents were self-made. My mom's dad finished 6th grade. And that's all the higher he went in education. And he owned his own businesses all through his life. He was successful in everything he did, but that was the physically hardest working guy you'd ever want to meet. And I learned about my work ethic, I think, from him and from my mom. My dad's dad graduated from Ohio State University. He taught physics and science in high school. He was the complete opposite, but he had a very quiet intellect about himself. He was the educated guy, and I got both sides of that I try to share, with the kids. And I think a lot of days, the kids that I'm running into nowadays, they don't want to work and do. Not all of them. I won't say all of them because we're some great kids that do great things, but the majority of them feel like should just drop in their lap, whatever it is. And so that work ethic, that you can achieve whatever you want to, but you have to go and get it. And I sometimes I'm surprised I haven't gotten in trouble in the past. I'll tell them, especially at the school in Fort Pierce, I'm like, you know what? When you go to the real world, nobody gives a shit that you were poor growing up. Nobody cares about the color of your skin. Nobody cares if your dad beat you. They just don't. There's an unforgiving society. And so if you think you're going to wear that on your sleeve and go out there and be successful, I think you're going to get your feelings hurt. I hate that stuff happened to you. I hate that that's the way it is, but I'm going to share with you the secrets that you can be successful if you can push that stuff aside and ignore it. And it was my military service showed me that you can achieve anything you want to achieve if you're willing to listen and to work hard, to follow some mentors, and find your way. And that was the value for me because I was going nowhere. My dad was a school teacher, and I still was a 1.9 grade point average in high school. I smoked my master's course. I had a 3.7. I grew up, and I learned how to learn that by then. But that's the kind of stuff that I try to I talk a lot about post-high school planning with the kids and set them up for success, so for whatever it is. And the rewarding piece is when I'm getting on Facebook. I got some of my kids texting me, still staying in touch, but sharing with me all the amazing things that they're doing now. And they've escaped that cycle of poverty. And a lot of them are in service. And that's okay. They may not stay forever, but that got them to escape. And I just watched and see how much they've grown up and what they've learned. And I'm proud of them. And I'm proud of my military service. And I want to say to those guys that are out there listening, I said before, I do keep to myself, and I'm an introvert. And if you ask me to do something 10 times, 9 times, I'm going to say, nah, probably not. but that's nothing to do with you. That's everything to do with me. So don't stop asking me. I do want to stay in touch with all of you. I miss you guys. I miss that camaraderie of all my oldsters out there. And although I do hate Facebook sometimes, I love Facebook because I can still see you and still chat with you and comment and still share. And I do want to keep that in my life because that's important. And there isn't anybody out here in the civilian world, for my wife as well. She shared the same kind of career, and we kind of keep to ourselves. But she's probably got more military friends than I do because she kept up with that. You're the best of America, and I am really proud to be part of that. And I'll say that to anybody without regret, that they can challenge me. Tell me somebody else who's the best of America, and I'll show you you're wrong. So,
amen. Amen. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We appreciate it, sir. You're such an inspiration. You've been serving our country for so many years in so many areas, and you continue to serve our country and our community. And there's nothing better than being able to mentor these youngsters in high school. And so thank you, sir, so much for that. I'll give you the final word, and we'll sign out. And then I want to play our slideshow one more time on the way out.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. Thanks a lot. I've really been honored to be asked, to tell. And who wants to listen to old guys tell war stories anymore? Nobody wants to do that. I do appreciate it. I look forward to the next reunions that are coming up, and I want to push out there. I know if you're talking to the guys in the battalion now, you got this younger group. We are always looking for mentors, for junior ROTC instructors. I have a hard time, to be honest, and I don't want anybody out there who did a National Guard time to feel bad, but a lot of times I'm having to look to the National Guard here, and I'm having to accept folks that are not maybe exactly what I'm looking for. They're great people, but I'm looking for some meat eaters, and I need senior NCOs to come out here and share what you have. So you know how to get a hold of me if you know anybody that's not been retired for more than 3 years. I'm going to give you a job that you already have the skill sets for and that you are desperately needed in to share what you know, and you can continue to make a difference. So that's my plug for JROTC. Mario can tell you.
Yeah. Looking back on it, I wish I'd have done it. I really do, in a way, for sure. So here we are.
Thanks, Will.
Absolutely, sir.
Was I ever really that young? The smoothness of that face, man. Too funny.
Seagulls flying overhead, towels down in the sand.
Old poor T was in that picture there.
Yeah, that picture around the mat board. I was the brigade commander giving an opward brief in Spanish. That was fun.
Oh, wow.
With guys from all over Central and South America. Awesome. Good times. Marijuana there.
Yeah.
This big bush.
So you had two big brothers, huh?
Yeah. Still got two bros. Big Joey.
I miss the salt in my hair.
That's my son.
And I miss your emerald stare.
You got to send this to me. It's a great. I know I got all these pictures on there, but it's a great.
So it's actually posted on Facebook and YouTube.
Oh,
and,
cool.
And it's going to come in your thumb drive right here.
Oh,
so
cool.
we'll send you the box with a coin and the thumb drive. It'll have our interview and this slideshow on it. So
that's neat.
You know, the thought, sir, is
you remember that you were somebody and you did something.
Yeah. Who doesn't want their grandfather's interview, right? Everybody.
I don't know.
Oh yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you. It was a great time. We were here with the Colonel tonight. Thank you, sir, so much for hanging out. We appreciate it. And good
Thanks a
night,
lot,
everybody.
Will. Thanks, folks. Stay in touch.
Versace trunks, I hit my backstroke. Knock on the door. She at the back, bro.